Hi, my name is Blake Freeman.
I'm Haley Muller.
I'm Sam Haney.
I'm Philip Saul.
And I'm Maverick Johnson.
Popeyes is our name and chicken is our game. Today we're going to be telling you guys about our expansion plans for Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. So Popeyes was established in 1972 by Al Copeland. They're an American quick service restaurant. Since then they've expanded to over 1,900 locations domestically and over 500 locations internationally. They also are primarily franchise business. They have over 97% of restaurants owned by franchisees. Their IPO came out in 2001, and initially, after struggling, have had much success since 2010, where their stock has increased over 750%. These are some of the places they've expanded to. They've had most of their success in South Korea, Vietnam, and Canada internationally, and obviously they've had much success in the US as well. So Popeyes brand aims to bring the Louisiana and New Orleans flavor to their restaurants. They offer many different types of food options such as bonafide chicken, seafood, wraps, beans and rice, and many others. Internationally, their brand is less recognized, so they aim to cater their restaurants to a more trendy, upscale, and contemporary style of restaurant to their customers.
In 2007, CEO Cheryl Batchelder took over and completely rebranded Popeyes. She used her experience as the KFC brand manager from 2001 to 2003 and applied this directly to Popeyes rebranding. She started by ordering all the franchises to be remodeled, and she even changed the company name from Popeyes Chicken and Biscuits to Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen. This way consumers see that Popeyes offers more than just chicken and biscuits, with many items like seafood and shrimp and Cajun shrimp. She is known to manage with a servant leadership style and has coined the term dare to serve. She encourages all the franchisees to manage in this same fashion. It's worked well for her and well for Popeyes. As you can see, in 2006, the year before Batchelder started, they had a net income of $22.4 million for the year. However, just last year in 2014, now that Batchelder's been there for quite a while, their net income for the year was $38 million. The last thing you need to know about Batchelder's rebranding is that she's selling Popeyes as a fast casual. Now, fried chicken usually isn't seen as a fast casual. It's not necessarily healthy, it's not new, and it's not too trendy, but this is what she's doing. It's working great domestically and especially well for the international markets.
Alright, so now we're going to look at Popeyes Porter's 5 Forces, just to give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on with the company right now. The first one is their bargaining powers of suppliers. This is their lowest threat due to the fact that they've had many of the same suppliers for several years. They've had 3 main suppliers: Supply Management Systems, Diversified Foods, and then Coca-Cola. So Supply Management Systems is their poultry supplier. They work to obtain poultry contracts with farms that are nearby in Popeyes locations. And then Diversified Foods is their seasoning suppliers, both domestically and internationally. They bought Diversified Foods in 2014, so they actually own that company now and have signed a contract with them until 2034. And then Coca-Cola is their last supplier for beverages, and they have worked with them since they first opened, so they have a very strong business relationship. It's not exactly one they would like to taint. Existing competitive rivalry is a very high threat. There are several big players in the market right now. For one, you have KFC and Chick-fil-A, who hold over 50% of the market. KFC comes in at 24.4%, Chick-fil-A at 25.1%, and then Popeyes comes in third at 11.1%. So both these are big players. They're well known. They're growing. Chick-fil-A is growing at a very high rate at 12% every year. So they've expanded, and consumers are aware of their presence. And this kind of puts Popeyes in a competitive environment internationally or domestically, faced with 2 direct competitors, while internationally they only have 1, as Chick-fil-A has not expanded to the international market yet. Their substitution of products is a medium threat. Popeyes is kind of unique in their Cajun style, and there's only 2 other main fast food companies that offer the same style, Bojangles Chicken and Copeland's. And both of these 2 companies haven't really expanded outside the southern US yet. Therefore, consumers still have the ability to go get a burger or attend another fast food place, but it's unlikely that they would do so if they were craving Cajun food. They're going to go to Popeyes. And then the last bargaining power of buyers is the next one that we're going to look at, and this is also a very high threat. This is mostly due to the fact that fast food and chicken is kind of an elastic good. Buyers have the ability to easily switch to a different product if they choose, and it would come at a low cost to them. In the US, the average consumer spends about $1,200 on fast food a year. That's twice a week in the drive-thru. So consumers are aware of their options, they know the market, they know what's out there, and they can easily switch. So it's in Popeyes' best interest to keep their customers happy, since this is such a high threat. And then the very last one is threat of new entrants. This is a medium threat. The market is controlled by big names that I've already mentioned before that are growing at fast rates. However, they have had some successes such as Adele's Chicken, and like I already said, Chick-fil-A is growing very fast. So in the future, it's possible for another company to enter the market, but it's unlikely that they could do so unless they're fulfilling a niche. Now that we've talked about that, we're going to look at our target market. So in the US, this is kind of a broader age range, anywhere between the ages of 25 to 45. The lower half of that prefers the boneless chicken, which you can see in the picture on the left, while the older half prefers the bone-in chicken, which you can see on the right. These are people who prefer quick service. They're in, they're out, they're busy lifestyles in the US, and it tends to be just something you're grabbing on your way out the door or through the drive-thru. While internationally, this kind of changes over to a different market. Internationally, you hit a younger age range between the ages of 18 to 35, and these tend to be people who have a little bit more money, they spend time in higher education, and they want to have more of a dine-in experience, and that's how they view Popeyes. Popeyes is trendier, it's a commodity in the international market, and you just hit a different market than in the US. This also applies to their franchises. So this is a typical franchise that you would see in the United States. Bright colors, something to grab the consumer's attention as they're driving by, if they're hungry, just to get them through the drive-thru. While internationally, this is kind of a mock-up of what their international stores look like. It's a little bit sleeker, more modern. It has neutral colors with big windows, and they're hitting on the international market that enjoys sitting in and spending time in the restaurant.
Moving on to Popeyes SWAT, we'll start with their strengths. Popeyes has both a strong operating network and they have a strong financial performance. Currently, they are ranked second in the world behind only KFC for the total number of quick-serve chicken restaurants. They have over 2,500 as of this year globally. They are present within 48 of the 50 US states, and they are in 28 other nations. Last year, they recorded over a 6% increase in same-store sales, both domestically and internationally. Moving on to Popeyes' weaknesses, they have a declining liquidity ratio. This can be related to their increase in current liabilities of $7.9 million. Also, they have an increasing company-wide debt. This year, they recorded a $72.7 million increase in their debt. Moving on to their opportunities. Popeyes has an opportunity with the 5 countries that we selected, in that the countries have growing fast food industries, and there is a increasing amount of expenditures on food away from home. Popeyes has threats from these countries, from their governments, in that some of the regulations can be stringent and make it tougher for Popeyes to conduct business. Also, Popeyes has the risk of having some of their chicken contaminated, say with bird flu.
So Popeyes' main competitor, both internationally and domestically, is KFC. They're the largest chicken chain in the world with over 41,000 restaurants in 115 countries. KFC in the US has just over 24% of the market share, and internationally they have the highest percentage of the market share of the fast food chicken industry. So because of KFC's global success, Popeyes uses them as an indicator to determine whether or not they can be successful before entering a new market. So the countries that we decided to research are Brazil, Poland, China, Taiwan, and Thailand. These are some of the few countries that Popeyes isn't already in, and they're promising markets for the quick service chicken industry.
Taking these 5 micro data points that we felt were the most important key market indicators, we then were able to evaluate each of those 5 countries that we selected for this project by this criteria. We studied the consumption of fast food poultry per capita. We studied the total number of fast food chicken transactions within the countries. We studied the number of KFCs within the country. The reason why this is important is because it's an actual criteria that Popeyes uses when studying a country. So for example, if a country has more KFCs that are performing better, it's a key indicator to Popeyes that that market would be a good one for them to be in as well. Moving along, we also decided to research the out-of-home spending on food and the disposable income within homes. With all this data, we constructed a graph beside each of the countries, and we were able to rank each country against each other within those 5 fields in order to see who performed the best, with 1 being the best, beating all the other countries, and 5 on the bottom as being the worst. So I will begin by talking about Thailand. First, their pros. They have 488 KFCs within their country, which ranks 2nd among the 5 countries that we studied. They also have a very low unemployment rate. This is because the government within the country does not give unemployment benefits. Therefore, everybody would like a job, and it'd be very easy to hire people within Popeyes if they were to move there. Also, they have the highest number of, or 2nd highest number of chicken fast food transactions at almost 96 million transactions a year. However, on the con side, they have the lowest urban to rural ratio out of the 5 countries. Almost half of their population lives in urban settings. They also have the lowest consumption of poultry per capita at only 7.9 kilograms. And then finally, they have the lowest percentage of money spent on food away from home. Only 68% of their money spent on food is away from the home.
Alright, so Brazil is another country that we looked at. They have a population of 202 million people. 85% of those people live in urban settings. Their poultry consumption is very high. As you can see, it ranked number 1 out of all our 5 countries. They consume about 12.6 metric tons per year. That correlates to about 43 grams per person. Brazil's economy is very large and has been growing recently. They're the largest Latin American economy and the 7th largest economy in the entire world. And they also eat out of the home pretty often. About 35% of their total meals are taken out of the home, and that number is even higher for ages 20 to 40, which is right within our target market. Brazil does have some cons though. They had a recent influx in economic growth due to the 2014 World Cup and the 2016 Summer Olympics, and there's been some concerns that could lead to a market crash following the Summer Olympics. The market has also not been friendly towards U.S. businesses. Brazilians tend to prefer the traditional, local, down-the-street shops and restaurants, and they don't tend to gravitate towards new U.S. companies that are coming in.
Alright, so taking a look at Taiwan, they're first in regards to disposable income at $26,000 per household. They also have or continue to make economic reforms in their country, which makes the ease of doing business very easy. Also, they rank first in regards to seafood per household at over 170 kilograms per household per year, and second in regards to poultry per capita at 32 kilograms per person per year. Looking at some cons, they do have a smaller population, only 23 million people, which means their market size is smaller. They also rely on some imports for many of their products. They also are a very highly competitive environment. KFC and McDonald's are already established in this country, so this could make entering the market a little more difficult.
Now we take a look at China. They have an enormous market, and any company looking to expand internationally cannot look past China. For 2014, they marked up a 7.4% GDP growth, and while some people are scared that their economy is declining, this is still a significant number and is at least twice of that of the US for 2014. China also has a great middle class right now, and this is good for Popeyes' international market. China, also out of our 5 countries, ranks second for the most seafood consumed per capita. And now we can take a look at the con side and look at the target market. And we do see that China is experiencing an aging population due to the effects of the one-child policy. This does not align as well with Popeyes' international target market. Also, China has a low percentage of their population in urban, which is about 50.6% of the population living in those urban cities and on the east side of China. And so, although this is low, that's still over 500 million citizens. Also, China has the lowest GDP per capita out of our 5 countries, and it's the most competitive country we're looking at, as KFC has the most stores out of any country in China.
One of the main pros of Poland is the high disposable income. They have the second highest disposable income of the countries we looked at, just behind Taiwan. They also have very low production costs for poultry, which has led to a recent increase in poultry production and exports. In addition, Poland has had recent government quality assurance initiatives that have increased the quality of poultry and encouraged consumers to start eating more chicken. However, despite the high disposable income, Poland still has the lowest out-of-home food spending. And even though KFC has been relatively successful in Poland with 192 restaurants, they still have the lowest number of fast food chicken transactions.
Alright, so these were our GMMSO rankings. As you can see, Taiwan ranked the highest at 70, followed by Brazil at 62, China at 60, and then Thailand and Poland at 50 and 49.
So we decided to go with China and Taiwan.
Alright, so you may be wondering why we didn't pick the other 3 countries. First off, we looked at Poland and decided that the fact that they have the lowest fast food chicken consumption and out-of-home eating, and they also have a very low rate of eating seafood, made the country not a good place for us to enter. We want to hit somewhere that has a target market that's interested in the food we sell. The next one we looked at was Thailand, and they, besides the fact that they have the lowest poultry consumption per capita, they also have a large number of KFCs, 488. As we've spoken before about how KFC is a good, kind of a good thing to look at when entering a country for Popeyes, you have to hit a very good middle number. So you don't want there to be too many KFCs to the point where the competition would be too high for Popeyes to try and gain market share, especially since Popeyes has just recently been expanding internationally. And the last one we looked at was Brazil. And this is kind of the opposite problem for Brazil. They have the lowest number of KFCs, and that's mostly due to the fact that Brazilians don't really invest into US companies, and KFC has been pulling back in recent years from the Brazil market.
Now that we've narrowed it down to these 2 countries, I'll be representing Taiwan.
And I'll be representing China. As I spoke on before, we can just take a look at the enormous market size of China first off. With 1.3 billion people, that's a whole lot more than Taiwan's 23 million.
Yeah, and although Taiwan only has 23 million people, there is quite a few upsides to Taiwan. For starters, their ease of business ranks very high. For example, it only takes 3 documents to start a business in Taiwan, as opposed to China, where it can take over 70 different documents. Taiwan also is a capitalistic economy, so that makes ease of doing business much more steady and smooth. They also have continued to make economic reforms as well, as I mentioned earlier.
If Popeyes looks to go into China, there's actually a niche market they can fill. The Sichuan province of China, the province is kind of like a state, has 80 million people in it alone. And they are known to cook some of the spiciest food in the world. This pairs up well with Popeyes Cajun seasoning and caters to those people who like a little bit more spice in their dish.
Taiwan also likes these spicy flavors, but in addition to that, they also like new and international type of cuisines. So the Cajun spices and the unique flavor of Popeyes' food would cater very well to this market of people.
As I mentioned before, China has a great middle class right now. It's estimated about 230 million Chinese citizens sit in that middle class. And the McKinsey Research Institute projects that by 2030, that number will increase to over 600 million Chinese citizens in the middle class. This works great for Popeyes' international target market.
So Taiwan's middle class is also growing, but more with the demographic of younger and educated professionals. This demographic tends to not eat out or not eat in the home very much, and home cooking is more of a foreign concept to them. Also, these millennials have had a fascination with international cuisine and perceive it as a trendy and new dining option.
I cannot stress enough the size and the market potential for Popeyes looking at China. They have the most out of our 5 countries of fast food chicken transactions. This is someone actually going into a store and going to a fast food restaurant like KFC or another local restaurant and buying a chicken related menu item. And for 2014, China had 2.1 billion of those transactions.
Also, I want to stress the fact that in Taiwan, 86% of money spent on food is spent outside of the home. And this is mainly because in Taiwan, it's very different than the eating environment we have in the States here. It's more of a social type of meal, and the social part of the meal is emphasized much more in this culture. Also, when we look at the direct competition within Taiwan, we can see that KFC only has a 3.5% market share here, as opposed to China, where there's a 12.1% market share. So right now, we see Taiwan as a much more penetrable option.
But one thing I want to talk about Taiwan, though, that I heard recently is this gutter oil scandal that they had. And so suppliers of cooking oil were supplying local restaurants with oil that had been used more than once, maybe 3 or 4 times, and that was called gutter oil. Do you know how Taiwanese consumers are going to be responding to this and what that might look like for Popeyes?
That's a good question. So I guess the gutter oil scandal affected primarily local companies or local businesses such as mom and pop stores, little street vendors and peddlers. However, it did not affect the multinational corporations such as KFC and McDonald's. They were not really affected, and I've asked a few of my Taiwanese friends, and they said that their perception was that these multinational companies were not affected. So I don't foresee this being an issue. However, I've also heard about some expired meat scandals going on in China. I read about McDonald's and KFC both having problems with selling expired meats to customers and customers getting sick. If Popeyes were to go into China, do you foresee this being an issue?
Well, actually, just this year, October 1st of 2015, China released a new food health and safety pack. And this pack added 40 new articles to the 2009 pack. And some of these articles did make stricter regulations for these suppliers of meat, so that a problem like this won't occur again. And hopefully this will ease the mind of Chinese consumers and make them feel more safe when they're making purchases at fast food restaurants. The last point I want to touch on is the company sales potential in both of these countries. This is a number that we calculated. So with a smaller market share in China, they can actually have sales revenue for the year of $187 million. And you compare that to Taiwan's, which is about $13 million.
Yes, Taiwan's company sales potential is only 13.2 million, but we can take this number with a grain of salt because you look at the comparison between the two countries, and China does have a much larger population. Also, Taiwan's middle class, their disposable income, which is part of our target market, is growing, and also 30% of all consumer spending in Taiwan is spent on food. So this number can be expected to grow from 13.2 to a bigger number in the coming years.
Okay, I've seen you said a lot of good things about Taiwan and brought up a lot of things about Taiwan that China doesn't really have going for them right now. Is there anything you can think of about this?
So for right now, I see the best option for Popeyes is to enter Taiwan. Although there are some similarities, and the main difference I see is where the middle class is standing right now. Right now, Taiwan's middle class has a large disposable income, and it seems like that would be a better option for us to penetrate. Maybe later on in the future, once we have a good idea of how well Popeyes is doing in Taiwan, we can move on and enter China. So what do you say we go into Taiwan right now?
All right, let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal.
Alright, so we did choose to enter Taiwan, and after doing our research and coming to this conclusion, we actually got in touch with the Director of International Expansion at Popeyes International, and he kind of explained that this is their strategy that they're working towards. They're hoping to hit Taiwan, go into that market, and then as they expand their brand image in Taiwan, eventually go into the broader market of China in the very near future.